Okay, part two here. This is the list, yeah, for the most part. First thing I need to do is assemble this intake, put it in place, figure out the vacuum hoses and the throttle cable, and fuel lines. Then I'll move to wiring. I need to also get some kind of air intake on here. Once the wiring is in place and the starter is in place, then I'll do the gauges, then I'll do the exhaust. So let me start here by determining whether or not I want to use. Some of these intake bolts have this little rubber washer, some have this, some do not. Near as I can tell, well, they are a different length tube. I don't think it matters. I'm going to use the ones with the rubber washers. They just fit right in here. So I also got some gaskets for this. So first let me grab some plugs and we'll plug up these vacuum ports until we determine whether or not we need them. Okay, I've got one toolbox that I have all my brake lines and compression fittings and vacuum fittings and stuff in, just that I've gathered over time. I'm hoping I can find just a few appropriate size plugs. Larger ones here if I can find them. All right, I decided to make a temporary plug here in case I need to use this as a I can use it to measure the vacuum of the engine once I get it running, and this is where my brake booster will tie in. This one's plugged off, and those are the only ones I see. All right. Now we'll move on to the fuel rails, see if we can get something going there. Let me get some these are the injectors. I've got all of them in there except for one. Grab. One second. All right, I'm going to put the fuel rail in, but at first you always want to lubricate these little O-rings. I've got some of this Earl's Assembly lube that's designed for fuel line fittings. It'll be fine for this. And these little rubber O-rings will kind of roll out of the way if they're not lubed up. You don't need that hassle. You just put a little dab on each one. A little lubrication goes a long way. Ask anybody. No, don't ask just anybody. You'll get sued or arrested or canceled. Something will happen. Probably better not to ever talk to anybody, truthfully. That's my advice. Never talk to anyone. You'll never be in any trouble that way. These two fuel rails are connected by a crossover tube, and the thing moves like crazy, but I guess it doesn't leak, so good design. It is unknown the age and mileage of these injectors, but we're going to try them. And if we get a misfire, that might be where I start looking for it. A new set of injectors is probably not particularly expensive. And there are places you can just send your injectors and have them professionally cleaned and flow tested. Let's see what we can do here. Seems like the front would be this way, but we'll find out. Alright, that looks about right there. And that one looks about right there. Alright. I cleaned this intake really well with detergent in a big Tupperware tub and scrubbed the inside and out. There was a label here, I detailed that with a Sharpie. I was going to smooth it out a little bit more, but it's not a show car. I don't know what I'm doing. Alright, let's see, I've got some bolts here for this. Here we go. Finally, some bolts that you don't have to be super crazy about the torque specifications. They're just holding these tabs in place. Hold the fuel rails down. Listen, if you're new to my channel, and you are, because I kind of just restarted it, I'm going to tell you, I'm not endorsed by anybody, sponsored by anybody, but I'm going to tell you right now, I got this awesome socket set. I had the same other one from Sam's forever. I mean forever. And I used it forever. It was great. 60-something dollars. It was the kind that opened up. I had it for 15, 20 years maybe. But this one, man, they thought of everything. They squared part of the socket off, so if you set it down, it doesn't roll. It's got a flat side. It's got a flat edge. It's brilliant, and I love these things. I can actually read the size on the side. It's just a good quality set, and I'm not not a sponsor of me or anything like that. I just wanted to tell you, if you're shopping for a socket set, it's pricey, but man, it's well thought out. And I even got this cool, they call it the pack out tool system. Stupid amount of money I spent on it for me, but it is so luxurious. I mean, I dig it. This intake is what they call the Trailblazer SS intake. I mean, it's probably not a genuine Trailblazer SS intake, but it's the Trailblazer SS style of intake, truck intake. It's supposed to flow really well. Not super important that it does. It's just a fairly stock 5.3 LS on the thing, but if you're going to put it together, why not get some good stuff if you can? The idea is eventually to build a nice 6-liter LS for that van, and I've got the stuff to do it. It's some of the stuff. That is a project for another day. We got to get this thing on the road. Okay, fuel rails done. Got some more figuring to do. I'll be right back with you. All right, I figured out the fuel system. This is a Corvette bypass regulator. This fuel rail doesn't have a return line, so what comes out of here is going to be perfectly regulated. And since I have yet to figure out how to put it on or where I'm going to mount it or anything, we're just going to ignore that till later. And we'll get it in the vehicle and we'll figure it out there, because I might have to make a short fuel line, and it looks like it has a grounding strap, so I want to make sure it's grounded, because what the hell. Anyhow, now we're gonna see about the super cool looking gaskets I got. And they go this way. Oh, that's cool. They snap in place. The modern LS is the equivalent of the old snap together models, if you remember those, if you're old. You know, I cleaned this thing out, but it's still got some soot in it, but it's all right. Look at that, very cool. Now, let's see if I can, let's test fit this thing in the vehicle and see how it looks up close. All right, this is one of those little things that tends to eat up some time. This is the key to the work truck, which turns out doesn't run. Got to figure that puzzle out too. Had to take something cool to the Lowe's and get some metric washers. I'll show you why. These are the bolts that work with the Trailblazer SS intake manifold. These are the ones that have these rubber washers on it that fit the other truck type intake, and they're pretty close, but they're not the same. If you match them up, you'll see that the truck ones are just a little bit taller on the tube measurement. And does that matter? Well, yeah, it does, because this tube compresses the gasket and then it bottoms out, but it doesn't squish the gasket. That space is kind of critical. So we got some washers to make up that difference. And so now when I install it, they will be identical. All right. But this is the kind of thing that burns up a lot of time when you're just trying to put something together. So let me then show you the next thing I'm weird about. Man, that's luxurious.
Children trying for much side. They ain't got no food on but
Now, I hope you're not watching this video for any sort of instruction or advice. I mean, I hope you're not trying to learn something, because it's just for entertainment. It's just for if you want to sit on your ass and watch something instead of get up and do something, which is normally my mode. But I am told that when you snug these down and when you torque them into the proper torque, you do it in sort of a from the middle out type of pattern. So that's what I'm going to do. Crisscross, you know. You do my murder, I'll do yours. I wonder what Alfred Hitchcock would think of cinema today. He'd probably be pretty impressed with Stranger Things, I think. Alright, here's something I do that is probably incorrect. Once I get everything snug, I make sure it's just comfortably hand snug all the way around. And then after I get a heat cycle, assuming I get this thing to run, you know, We're kind of in fantasy land there, but once I get it running, get it warm one time, let everything cool off, I'll go back and torque to spec the exhaust manifold bolts, the intake bolts. This engine's run before, so I'm not worried about, like the head bolts and any of the other stuff, but the stuff that I've added, I'll go back and then torque them to spec after I cycle it one time, warm and cool, and go like that. Yeah, come on in here, take a look. This is the new intake all mounted up. Now, I think the next order of business is to make all the mechanical connections, with the exclusion of the exhaust system, meaning dipstick tube, shift linkage, throttle cable. I'm gonna have to come up with some kind of bracketry for that. Then the next level will be fuel lines, which are here because they are less flexible than the wiring. Because we have to connect that gas pedal to that throttle body somehow. And then once I get the engine harness routed, the wiring harness for the engine, then I can route the exhaust and I make sure nothing is going to be in conflict with that wiring or cause it to melt. If I do the exhaust first and I put it in the way of something, well, then I've got more work to do than I want. So let's get after that. Oh, and we need to come off this vacuum port, so we'll have power brakes. Brakes would be nice. Okay, this is the teaser for the next video. I've got to figure out this transmission linkage. There's a tack weld here I'm going to have to grind off, and we'll get some adjustments because it doesn't really want to stay in park, and that could be a problem if you're on a hill, say. But the intake manifold has become comfortably snug. It's only coming through in waves. So that's up in there, and the next step is going to be to do transmission linkage and the other transmission things, which will be on the next video. Thank you for watching.